Hello and thanks for checking out ChartGuys.com. We're proud to be one of the most successful technical analysis communities online, teaching you the skills to become a more confident, effective, and informed trader. Join our community of hundreds of analysts worldwide working together to learn the charts, generate profit, and achieve financial independence. For access to daily live chart analysis and market coverage, a thriving chat community, along with dozens of hours of exclusive educational materials. We look forward to seeing you. Let's check out some charts. Hey everyone, checking in for some late night MJ charts, and we got the follow through that the bears were looking for just because we ended last week so weak and we saw lower lows. So for CGC, we broke to confirm the daily bear flag, and we're now looking at 22.76, which broke as well. So we got the lowest price that we've seen on this current consolidation. Where is the next support level, you ask? Well, we're looking down at 22 psychological and then 21 psychological. So on the daily time frame, anything under 25.41 is a lower high. The bears have complete control. They will have to change the daily trend change. Then we'll have to see a weekly trend change in order to be looking at any kind of shift in momentum. The daily RSI is not yet oversold. The weekly RSI is right on the verge of oversold. The 4-hour RSI is not oversold because of the bounce we had at the end of the day. It's a fairly weak bounce. Again, 2 hours of pullback to start the morning, followed by 5 hours of bounce. And that 5 hours of bounce didn't even get back half of that pullback. So the bears have full control. We can absolutely see another leg down. And I'm not going to be interested in playing an oversold bounce on CGC unless we have weekly, daily, 4-hour, and hourly RSIs all oversold. If you give me that, I'll be interested in an oversold bounce play. Until then, I'm not interested. Cron confirming the daily bear flag as well. Daily, weekly are both already oversold. The 4-hour RSI is just above it. We have that bounce as well. The bounce is much more significant as far as today's action goes due to the size of the pullback and the size of the bounce. But the bottom line is those RSI levels cooled off. So again, same thing. My criteria for oversold bounces is all of those time frames lining up oversold. And if they don't, I'm going to be picky and I am not going to play that oversold bounce attempt. So 884 is support. The bulls have to break the high of today. Any name that changes its hourly trend, we zoom out to the daily and we look for a daily lower high to form. ACB continuing down. Lack of support down here for ACB. Weekly chart has broken any nearby support. 405 is the only support level left, and look at what comes after 405. There is just nothing there. 405 is a very key level, and if it breaks, the bulls are in trouble. RSI is oversold on the daily, the weekly, the 4-hour is right at 30, but bounced today, cooled off that hourly RSI. So again, I need all 4 of those oversold. APHA, big leg down today. Gap to fill was at 541. We filled that already, and now we're looking at 502. After 502, again, looking at the weekly time frame, after 502, we are looking back down at the lows from the short attack on APHA. 502 and 455 are the next levels. We are not oversold on the weekly. We are not, well, we're right above oversold on the daily. I'm not interested in an oversold bounce on APHA because that weekly is not oversold. It'll likely bounce when we see everybody else bounce in the sector, but I have my criteria. The trade has to come to me, and APHA is not fitting that criteria. Man, the bulls were so close to taking that momentum and becoming the technical leader of the Canadian MJ space, but they failed to do it. And now we're in the same boat as everybody else to a certain degree. TLRY, recent low, 25.15, has broken. So that was just a weekly lower high being set. We never changed the daily trend. Big bounce, higher low, fail to break resistance, break support with 3 red weeks in a row almost. Next support level, 24 psychological. Then we're looking down at 2150, the all-time, not exactly the all-time low, but just above it. Bears in complete control here as well. VFF stands out today with a bullish reversal candlestick and a close near the high of the day. Haven't changed the hourly trend. It was just a big hourly bounce. If the bulls are going to prove follow through, we have to consolidate and hold the low of today and then break the high and change that hourly trend. Anything on the daily time frame under 964 is a daily lower high, but it's worth keeping an eye on just because, again, it is so distinctly different than everybody else we just looked at because its hourly bounce was much stronger. LABS, equilibrium on the daily, As soon as 451 breaks, it's a bear break. That happened Friday. There's your follow through on big bear volume. Very convincing. And now we're looking down. 370 and 353 are the next levels. And labs, high, low the pullback, lower high, lower low. We are now in a monthly downtrend that failed all-time high, being a significant shift in momentum. So, bottom line, Canadian MJ, I will be watching for oversold bounces, and I'm looking forward to having the liquidity to play oversold bounces in the Canadian MJ space, because the USMJ liquidity for oversold bounces is junk. But Cron and CGC have my attention. One more solid leg down, if we get red tomorrow, would have me looking to begin to scale in. If we don't get those conditions, then I will gladly sit on the sidelines and wait for a daily bounce to take place without me, knowing that a lot has to take place before any daily trend change takes place, and I'm not going to miss a significant move patiently waiting for trend changes. So now to the USMJ space. Cureleaf is continuing to dump in the short term, as it is pricing in, again, the two bearish events, the vaping headlines as well as the impeachment headlines. And the impeachment headlines are meaning that Mitch McConnell is less likely to bring a Democrat-backed bill to vote in the Senate. And did a little bit of digging today, posted on Twitter looking for some more information and some help from you all. But as to whether or not we would just need a simple majority of 51 senators or a supermajority of 67 senators, and it does look like that Mitch would be able to determine what he wanted. But the most common scenario is a simple majority, and if he is going to vote on it, it's likely that he wants it to pass. So the odds are right now that it's not likely that he's going to vote on it. So that's why I'm treating it, if they're going to vote on it, they're going to get 51 senators to back it. So I will be treating news that this bill is getting voted on essentially as equivalent of it passing. And I will act aggressively if that happens. But right now, the market is telling us that it is not anticipating that happening as the most likely scenario. It's saying the most likely scenario is this bill is not going to get voted on. So we're dropping down on Cureleaf in free fall, in daily oversold conditions. The weekly time frame is the lowest point of consolidation. And 730 has broken, so we're looking at 7 psychological, and then 639. Daily RSI is oversold. 4-hour RSI is crushed. Hourly RSI had a weak little bounce attempt. We had a double top on the 15-minute time frame. So we had the low of the day. High of the bounce was 753. Lower low by 2 pennies. Rejected by resistance by 3 pennies. And then back towards the low of the day. I did make an initial entry for an oversold bounce play on Cureleaf. I got 12% of my order filled, and I pulled the order after that. Got 12% of my order fill on this pullback. We bounced 5% from that point, but again, it's so hard to trade the OTC with any kind of meaningful capital as it is so thinly traded. So we're going to have to see hourly trend changes on USMJ to see any kind of shift in momentum, knowing that any hourly trend change, we just zoom out and we look for a daily lower high to form. But Cureleaf closing at the low and an hourly bear flag forming, looks like we could see another leg down. New resistance is 750 and 753. CWeb. So CWeb is dropping to a daily lower low as well. Bounce attempt today with no follow through. 1785 is the next support. And we established a new hourly resistance at the high of today, 1912. Bears are strong. CL dumped to a lower low. CL and OH were very odd trading today. The bell rang and they were both pretty wild in the first 5-10 minutes of trading. Look at CL. Big bull move in the first 5 minutes, and then we just completely dumped. From that spike in the first 5 minutes to that dump, that's a 12% difference. And then at the end of the day, we had a huge bull move. And in recent past, the end of the day huge bull moves that we've seen in USMJ haven't had any follow through. So certainly not holding my breath on this, but watching the hourly chart, as an hourly trend change will be needed to shift any meaningful momentum, which means zoom out and look at daily resistance, 851. So OH, same thing. We had very odd trading to start the day. We had a gap down open to 540 and then just choppy, weird action. Bottom line, it was a slow fade. Same bull move at the end of the day as OH. And we look at the hourly chart. And we're just looking for an hourly lower high to form on this bounce, and we'll have to see an hourly trend change to have any meaningful follow through. TRUL has a triple bottom down at 1050. Bulls have to hold 1050 and break 1128 to see any kind of meaningful shift in momentum for a weekly higher low to try and form. Bulls are playing defense. Now they have to go on offense and break 1128. Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything. IAN had news come out about a $100 million line of financing. The Bulls will say that's great. We've got all the financing we need now to build out. The Bears will say that's dilution. And the Bulls will respond that, or the Bears will say that the deal wasn't that great with 13% interest. The Bulls will say that that's what everybody in the space is getting. So you'll get your back and forth there. The chart doesn't lie. The chart is still very bearish. We closed down at the low and we continue to hit lower lows. And the only good news short term for me as a trader with this news is that we don't have to worry about dilution news surprising us out of nowhere and smacking us in the face. Any name like CL, which had its dilution news on this gap down open 2 weeks ago, and now IAN, that's out of the way. So it's pulling the band-aid off in a certain sense. And if I were going to swing any positions in a name that has previously just announced dilution news, it is more comfortable for me than swinging a name that has not. Because again, worst case scenarios, I'm swinging a play on an oversold bounce and dilution news comes out and we gap down. So that's out of the way. But again, I was watching IAN trade today. ITHUF had hidden selling shares at 150 and it just sat there. And look at the amount of volume on the US side of things here. It's the highest US volume that we've seen in over a month. And it was very clear there was a high volume first thing this morning, and there was just a ton of shares being sold. Look at all these shares at 150 being sold. Between 146 and 150, it was a brick wall. And we were seeing way more volume going through than there was on the ask, which shows me there's a hidden amount of shares that was not allowing the price to get over that level. So you look at IAN, and it is the most beat up USMJ name by far. The weekly time frame is in free fall. The weekly RSI is 23. The only support level left is down at 170. And after 170, we are looking at 120. The daily RSI is down at 20, 21. The 4-hour RSI is down at 20, and the hourly RSI is down in the teens. So I am expecting a short-term bounce in the near-term future. It'll probably bounce when the rest of the sector bounces. And I'm going to be very interested to see what the sector comparison is for this current bounce. We are going to be looking for a daily lower high to form soon in the sector and a bounce to give us a daily lower high, as we're going to reach, in my opinion, a temporary climax of capitulation. Whether that's the bottom or not, certainly not going to hold my breath that it is the bottom, but I'm going to be very curious to see what names bounce further from their lows once we get that short-term little shift. And again, the fact that IAN news is out now, and you can also, there's so much speculation you can do. Well, Gotham just got this deal for 100 million shares, and even paying a 25% premium on the current price. I forget what price the deal went through. It was in US dollars, let's say 186, something along those lines. It's roughly around there, but it's the lowest price that we've seen traded, and only the last 3 days were lower. So essentially, if it is at 186, and again, it might be up by a couple pennies, but if it is at 186, they just got $100 million right there. So what's their incentive? Their incentive is for the price to be as low as possible before that deal goes through. So even though they have a prior position, it might be worthwhile to spend $500,000 or $1 million shorting IAN. $1 million shorting IAN in this current environment can drive the price down 5 to 10%. And if you can get $10 million or $100 million worth of shares at a lower price, you get what I'm saying. The bottom line is that was a potential reason that people were looking for downward pressure, perhaps for conversion prices to be lower. But we certainly did not see any of that downward pressure taken off today. So bottom line is, when we do bounce, we will just be looking for an hourly lower high. If we can change the hourly trend, we'll just be looking for a daily lower high. And if we can change the daily trend, we're just looking for a weekly lower high. That's the case for the majority of the MJ sector right now. But again, the weakness in IAN is astounding. And I am interested in an oversold bounce play. Now that that dilution news is out of the way, once we see the sectors start to shift, we'll see what the percentage bounces are comparatively. MedMen dropped to an all-time low today, down to 179. Anything on the daily chart under 225 is just a lower high. We did get a bit of a bounce into the end of the day, and you could consider that an hourly trend change. Low, high of the bounce, our higher low is 186, and then we saw that bull move into the end of the day. So we zoom out and we look for anything under 225 to just give us a daily lower high off of the all-time low. GTII dropping down to 1041, the only nearby support. Weekly higher low trying to form compared to that level, but bulls don't have much space to go before we get to it. Bounce at the end of the day, have to change the hourly trend for any kind of meaningful bounce, and then we just look for daily lower highs. So the bottom line is, at this point, if you're not looking to just play little short-term oversold bounces for scalps, which is hard on the OTC, then you are patiently waiting at a bare minimum for daily trend changes. And once those daily trends change, we will be looking for weekly lower highs, but at least it will shift short-term momentum. Do I think we're going to keep dropping 5 to 10% every day this week? No. I think we're going to hit a temporary bottom tomorrow or Wednesday. I think we're going to see a bounce for daily lower highs at that point, and we will gauge the size of the bounce on the daily time frame as to how much space the bulls have to create a trend change. If we see bear flags, we're going to look for lower lows. If we see bounces that create enough space that we can form a higher low, then a daily trend change is on the table. But first things first, we have to change hourly trends and see any kind of bounce on the daily follow through. So that's where we stand in the sector as a whole. It's still very bleak out there, watching for the broader names to potentially be an indication of when the USMJ bounce is going to get going, because it's going to be really hard for the USMJ sector to bounce on its own if CGC keeps dropping to the lowest price we've seen in months. So in my opinion, we're going to have to see everybody bounce at the same time, and there's no sign of that just yet, but I do feel we will see that happen to a small degree this week. Thanks again. Do good things. We'll see you tomorrow.